What's up, nerds? This is Mr. Storm, and we are going to talk about forms today. Forms are great. Now, with HTML, we can make forms, but we can't really make them do anything at all. We can make them, and they look good, but they won't do anything. So just know that. You can make a form, but you can't make it do anything. Because the way forms work are you build them with HTML. And then in the on the server side, that form will then create a new record for a database. So let's say you have a form that is a contact me form, where you have people put in their name, their address, their whatever, and then they hit go, and it sends all that information to a database, and then that database stores their information, and then we can use that later to contact them with information that they've requested. You'll see forms all the time on the internet for things like logging into a web page. Anytime you go into a website and you need to log in, you'll be filling out a form, and all that does is it takes that record that you've completed from that form, it goes to the database on the server, and it looks for that record. It looks to make sure that the username matches with the password. Well, the password is going to be hashed, so the server won't know what the actual password is, but it's going to be an encrypted version. But it's going to make sure that those two match, and if it does, then it gives you access. If it doesn't, then it tells you all kinds of nasty things. So that's how forms work. So I'm going to teach you how to build a form. I am not going to teach you how to do the server side stuff because that's more advanced. That's going to be in like when you get to college level classes with web development and you're doing databases and server management, then you're going to start doing the PHP and SQL and that kind of stuff to talk to forms and make them do stuff. But we need to learn how to make them. So let's go ahead and dig in to our resources and see what we have. So this is essentially a form. This is a very simple form. It just asks for your first name, and you can go ahead and type it in and do whatever, and then it asks for a last name, and then you can click submit, and it doesn't really do anything because there's nothing for it to accept on the back end. And it says right here, this tutorial will not teach you how servers are processing input. Processing input is explained in our PHP tutorial. So if you want to learn PHP and the server side, you can dig into that, but just don't do it right now because we need to complete the assignment. So forms are really easy, okay? Just like everything else in HTML, forms start with a form element. So you have an open tag for your form element, then you have all your form elements in the middle, and then you have a close tag. That's it, right? So you can have input inside of your forms. So each form, you probably should have some kind of input element. And input elements are things like text, so a one-line text input field like this. This is a text input element. You can have things like radio buttons, where you have those circle buttons and you can only click one of them in a set. You can have a submit, which is a button, which takes all the information from that form, compiles it into a record, and sends it over to the server. So there are a lot of input types that you can use. So here's an example of a very easy, basically that form we saw before. This is what it looks like. So you have your form, then first name, input type, text, and then the name of that input field is first name. It's important to name your input fields because your server needs to be able to pull those fields individually by their variable names. Again, that's stuff you're going to need to know later when you're doing PHP. But you want the type attribute to be filled out. You want the name attribute to be filled out. We have a couple break lines so that they don't all end up on the same line. But we have first name, we have our text input, last name, text input, and that's it, right? So this doesn't have a button. This is just a form. So these are just a couple inputs, no actual button. Radio, this is a radio button input. So you have input type radio, name is gender, and then the values are different. So up here where the names were different, with a radio button set, the whole set is named the same thing, right? And so you have male, female, and other. So let's take, actually, the example's right there. Right here, so you have your radio button set, male, female, other. That means in the set of gender, whichever of these is selected is going to be the one that gets sent to the server. So I identify my gender as a I don't know, a TAC helicopter. So that's my gender right there. So I can select that, and then that gets sent over. We have submit. The submit button is just it's of type submit, and the value is submit. It's just a submit button. The value here is whatever's going to show up on the button as text. So the value can be something like, instead of submit, it can be, click me, and then it just changes what text is in the button. That's pretty easy stuff. Action. The action attribute, again, something you really don't have to worry about, but the action is where the form is going to send its information. So is it going to go to a PHP script that's going to handle that data collection, or is it going to go somewhere else? So the action is important, but again, not really for you. You don't have to worry about it. There are methods here for getting and posting data. Again, that's for PHP. The name attribute allows you to specify variables for the server side. You can group data with field set. So a field set is kind of like a div inside of a form. You can create a field set for this field of data, and it kind of just adds a box around certain types of or certain things inside your form. If I was to add something outside of the field set, it'll still be in my form, but it won't be inside that field set. So I can do input type equals text, name, address, and I'm not going to add a value because I don't need anything to be entered in there when I open it up. So I can run that, and so now I have a new input box, but it's outside of that field set. So field sets are cool. Let's see. There's some exercises down here. Please play around with the exercises so you can learn more about these forms. Let's take a look at elements. Elements are cool. So there are a lot of different kinds of elements. We've already talked about text and radio. The select element is great. It is essentially a drop-down box, a drop-down menu. And the way it works is you create a select element, you give it a name, and then you give each option and a value for those options. And then this right here is the text that shows up in the field. Text area, instead of just having one line, it gives you a big area to enter text. Button is obviously a button, and when I hit it, it says hello world. So you can do buttons. You can do data lists, keygens. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff in here that you can use. We're not going to dig too much into any of this stuff, but there's a lot there for you to play with. We have more input types we can look at. So we've already seen type text. We can do a password input, which will take anything you type in and make it those dots so that people can't see your password whenever you're typing it in. We have submit for your buttons. We have reset. So that's a reset button, which will reset the entire form. It just clears everything out and lets you start over. We have radio buttons, which we've talked about. We have checkboxes, which are great because checkboxes, they're just like your other input types. They need a specific name, and you can check as many of them as you want. So those are good. Let's see. Input type button. Yeah, we've already talked about that. There are a lot of HTML5 input types that you can use. HTML5 does all kinds of cool stuff, like, for example, color. So you can have input and select a specific color from a color picker here. Any web color is available here, so you can select that, and then that's the color, and then you hit submit. That's cool. HTML5 lets you do date. You can have a date input. So it'll allow you to choose from a calendar a date. Let's see. You have date time. You could do an email, months, numbers. There's all kinds of stuff here. So go through here and take a look at what's available to you. There's a lot here. And then we have different attributes we can attach to our input. So we can do things like read only. which will make it so that you can't change the information in that text field. So here I can't change anything. It's just basically I can't interact with it. We can disable stuff. We can change the size. We can change the max length so that you can't enter more than the amount of characters you've specified. We can do an autocomplete so that it tries to autofill as we're typing things in. We can do non-validate, which gets around validation for your form. We can do autofocus so that whenever you open up a web page and there's a form on the page and we set an autofocus for one field, it'll automatically put your cursor in that field so you don't have to navigate to it and click. What else? There's all kinds of stuff here, but I'm not going to go over all of it. Boom. Yeah, go through this at your own pace and read it and try to understand as much of it as you can. Remember, with forms, a lot of this stuff is stuff that we just don't really need. All right, so normally I'd walk you through the assignment, but this is the last assignment for HTML. At this point, if you can't go through your web page and follow the simple instructions, then you need more help than you should at this point. So I'm just going to let you complete this assignment on your own. You're going to create a form on your page, anywhere on your page, wherever you want it to be. You're going to add a drop-down menu to that form. You're going to add a text area to that form. You're going to add a set of radio buttons to that form, a set of checkboxes, and a submit button. And then you're going to use some attributes in CSS to make your form work and look great. You can add CSS to your forms as well. So you're going to play around with that. When you're done with your form, you're going to save your document as aboutme11.html, rezip your last name website folder, and then you're going to upload it. As the last time you're going to have to worry about this website. After this form is on there, this website is complete. And I know it looks gross and you don't like it and whatever, but be proud of the progress you've made so far. After this, we're going to get into the quiz, and then we will be on to the next semester. So, actually, no, I have a couple other lessons at the end before we get into the next semester. But this is the last time you're actually doing a web page in HTML strictly. Next semester, we're going to talk about CSS, so get excited for that. We're going to learn how to make our websites look great. So build your form, turn in your assignment, and then you can move on and start studying for the quiz. All right. Thank you very much for paying attention, and I will see you next time.